What do I love about Elliot Lake?
If you love the outdoors, this is certainly the place to be.
Nice, affordable lifestyle. It's a very friendly community.
Every day is like a dream. Life is good in Elliot Lake.
It's a great place to retire to.
This is a scrapbook that my wife Ann made during the building of the Centennial Arena. This is me.
Elliot Lake has a challenge when it comes to providing services for healthcare.
Just like anywhere else in Ontario, it's hard to get that family doctor.
You couldn't make it in the mines if you didn't have a good work ethic. You had to go, you had to give her.
There's a clandestine search to move into this area, and what they do is they stake across the territory, across Anishinaabe territory.
You never know when they go down the mines if they're going to be okay and if they're going to come home that night.
People came from all over the world to work in the uranium mines.
I see all these guys spitting up blood. It's like little pieces of glass in your throat.
They stopped the ventilation and let the canisters go.
And that's when I got the diagnosis.
What happens is devastation.
We often hear people say, well, we don't want to hear about the uranium and we don't want to hear about, well, if you don't know where you came from, you can't go forward.
Situated among crystal rivers, dense woods, and breathtaking vistas, the town of Elliot Lake is a picturesque haven of small-town life in northern Ontario. Known locally as a jewel in the wilderness, it sits between Sudbury and Sault Ste. Marie, just north of the Trans-Canada Highway and the meandering Serpent River. The residents of Elliot Lake are proud to have survived the booms and busts of their past to emerge as a thriving retirement community. But long before becoming the town we see today, it was known by its Ojibwe name, Mushgadne Gaming, meaning the lake is full. Part of the Robinson-Huron Treaty, the area was and still is territory of the Serpent River First Nation.
So we're actually on Anishinaabe territory here right now. And my ancestors, as well as the ancestors of Anishinaabe people throughout this area of the North Shore, they used this territory for hunting and trapping, moving around.
Since migrating from the East Coast in 900 AD, the Serpent River First Nation people called the land surrounding Elliot Lake home. But since colonization began in the 1600s, this community has fought what at times has felt like a losing battle to protect its land. The arrival of European settlers led to an industry boom that put Elliot Lake on the world map, but had a complex and destructive effect on the terrain and its original inhabitants. Historian Marie Murphy-Foran has worked tirelessly alongside other locals to document Elliot Lake's post-colonial history as a mining hub and world supplier of minerals during the mid-1900s.
What do I love about Elliot Lake? I love that there are 4,000 lakes within an hour around us that we can get out to enjoy, whether it's canoeing, whether it's paddling, whether it's boating or fishing.
Marie is the president of the Elliot Lake Historical Society, which meets weekly to share stories and archival documents in an effort to preserve and celebrate the rich history of this northern Ontario town.
It wasn't recognized as a result of working in the mine until 20 years later.
Today it's a general working meeting, so what I would like to do is actually have people talk to about.
Today, the region's past is held in two parts. In the oral histories of members of the Serpent River First Nation dating back to the 1600s, and the post-colonial industry boom since the city of Elliot Lake was officially established merely 70 years ago. It is a nuanced and interwoven history brought together by the fact that settler and First Nations communities coexist on the land today.
I always did like history. Elliot Lake is a community of only 70 years old. That's part of the history. That's what we want to bring alive in our storytelling. If you don't know where you came from, you can't go forward. And we often hear people say, well, we don't want to hear about the uranium and we don't want to hear about, well, that is our history. And it's that influence of Elliot Lake that's part of the story that we need to tell now.
In the 1950s, Elliot Lake became one of the world's suppliers of uranium, the essential fuel in the production of nuclear energy.
Science will never regress, and freedom itself will never be wholly lost.
During the geopolitical tensions of World War II, and under the guidance of physicist Robert Oppenheimer, the United States was running an arms race. Their goal was to create the world's first atomic bomb. And when a young geologist arrived to prospect for minerals, he discovered vast deposits of the key ingredient, uranium. Upon the Canadian government's legalization of public prospecting, a young geologist, Frank Jubin, headed to an area near Sault Ste. Marie armed with a Geiger counter and on a mission to find the region's rumored uranium deposits.
Jubin was a geologist, and he basically came and checked it all out, and he said, okay, we're doing this. To me, that is just fascinating. That should be brought alive.
And this is in the summer of 1953. And there's a clandestine search to move into this area. Prospectors, company representatives moving into this area.
Jubin had acquired prospecting licenses from different mining offices throughout the province, an attempt to minimize the chance that the search could be found out by those who could potentially cut into his anticipated profits. At the time, mining claims would be granted to the last party to place a stake over them, and Jubin's operation was wary of this. To avoid detection, they arrived by plane in the dead of night on the Serpent River First Nations land.
And what they do is they stake a large Z across the territory, across Anishinaabe territory. And all of those stakes are, representing mining interests in this territory. Again, another way of extracting things from Anishinaabe territory.
The Serpent River First Nation had been residing in the area for several hundred years and had not been consulted on the impending prospecting endeavors. It was the first of many steps that decentered the wishes of the Serpent River First Nation people and ushered in a new age of industry.
Thus began one of the greatest mining enterprises of all time, an enterprise or a whole group of enterprises destined to change this sylvan spot into one of the busiest areas in Canada.
And so the mines start to develop very soon after that, as does the town of Elliot Lake, which doesn't exist as a settler town before that Cold War time period. The town sites begin to be established by 1955-56, and it's hard to imagine how quickly this whole town site is developed. So they build schools, they build a community center, the Collins Hall, they build all kinds of, the whole town in a matter of just a few years.
This is Elliot Lake, the city in the forest.
Local resources were poured into building a town quickly, one that could support an impending population boom. Laborers and their families were drawn by the thousands to the prospect of potential employment.
What we see happen then is, as the town site becomes established, more settlers and their families move into this area.
After the discovery of uranium, people came from all over the world, actually, to work in the uranium mines, beginning in 1954. 1954, people were living all over the place. There was no road in Elliot Lake. They had to build the road.
Industrialization came quickly, impacting the Serpent River First Nation people, as well as their land and resources. Adapting their traditions and practices to the mining industry became the new norm, and it left them with few options in the quickly changing landscape.
So the stories that have been shared with me in terms of my family history, talk about, I think, a tension that was starting to develop between the trapping that had been done in the past, the importance of that, relying on fish, relying on game, relying on the river also for drinking water. Trappers noticing that there was a decline in the quality of the beaver. People understanding that there hadn't been the same number of fish as before.
With less available resources, the Serpent River First Nation people looked for new options, which forced them to adapt even more.
So we see also a very quick transition to more store-bought food, but also alienation from traditional territory and traditional pursuits. So if the fish isn't safe anymore, if the beaver isn't safe anymore, there's more of a reliance on those foods that there hadn't been before. And then also, though, the draw of waged work. And families are faced with really difficult choices.
While the Serpent River First Nation community grappled with a dramatic culture shift, the town of Elliot Lake continued to develop full speed, welcoming swaths of new residents looking for opportunity. With the mining community growing and putting down roots, a new era had begun. Elliot Lake was officially established in 1955 as a planned community to accommodate the needs of the booming mining industry. Resource towns like Elliot Lake were built from the blueprint of the towns that came before, but with contemporary planning ideas like large service centers and updated architectural designs.
My name is Ken Pierce. I came to Elliot Lake in 1957. When I finished high school, I was a surveyor for the Department of Highways. Ontario Department of Highways, was making $150 a month, which was relevant at that time. I had a couple of uncles and a cousin when Elliot Lake just started, and they said, well, they're looking for surveyors in the mines. So I come up, did an interview, and hired on for $300 a month, which was a huge, in those days, 1957. And in February of 1958, my wife Ann and our 2-month-old baby came to Elliot Lake, and been here ever since.
This industry boom was a beacon of hope for Northern Ontario's working class. And with half a dozen mines up and running, Elliot Lake had the next several decades of bustling industry to look forward to. For those employed by the mines, it provided a stable income and growing community for putting down roots and starting families.
My name is Janice Martel. I am the daughter of Jim Hobbs, who was an underground miner here in Elliot Lake. My dad had a grade 10 education, and mining offered the wages and the lifestyle that these workers wanted. You never know when they go down the mines if they're going to be okay and if they're going to come home that night. Eventually he would show up and things would be okay, but I had no idea what Dad was going through at work. Never know what he was facing every time he went down in the mines. It's an unseen world. It's underground literally and figuratively. He was just a very loving, good dad, and had a strong work ethic. They all did. You couldn't make it in the mines if you didn't have a good work ethic. You had to be, you had to go. You had to give her when you went. That was it. The problem is that it killed them.
While mining came with inherent risks, it didn't slow down the rapid growth of Elliot Lake, nor was it enough to deter the thousands of young families who arrived in search of a better life, while the town was still finding its footing as a municipality.
People came from all over.
Yeah, and
they definitely did.
And that, to me, that's the main thing. Besides the mining, and the lumbering, and the fur, and the First Nations, who were here long before we were, the history is the people that have developed this town and have stayed with it through all the bumps and have built this town up from scratch.
The town was booming to beat the band. They were basically attempting to do everything all at once, and muddy highways, and there was contractors galore coming to build. They had to bring all kinds of people here, not only for the mine, but also for post office, for all the amenities. So families were waiting for houses. It was exciting, exciting.
Elliot Lake was supplying masses of uranium worldwide, and the town's infrastructure was forced to keep up with the demand for waged workers. Until that point, Elliot Lake's mines had outsourced their supply of sulfuric acid, which was used to extract uranium from ore. And mine owners were thinking critically about ways to boost production that would increase the number of available jobs for locals and keep outsourcing to a minimum. In 1957, the Cutler acid plant opened, and while it increased mining profits, it also had complex effects on the local ecosystem.
So the acid plant is built in the mid-1950s in the middle of the reserve, and with the promise of jobs and leasing revenues. But what happens is devastation. Other women in the community talked about putting their laundry out on the line to dry their clothes. And when they took it down, there were little holes in it. Looked like little moth holes, but it was really from the air pollution. Roofs of their homes would rust, cars would rust, lots of skin rashes, lots of eye infections in children. This is having an impact on Indigenous children and Indigenous peoples in this community. My grandmother had thought, oh, I'm gonna take my kids to go swimming in the Serpent River. She thought, well, it's nice and clear. Well, there's radium-226 in that river where she's bringing her children to swim.
Elliot Lake found itself facing a crossroads, providing a stable living for thousands of skilled workers and their families, or caring for the land, its original inhabitants, and its natural resources. Each came at a great cost, one they'd eventually need to pay. But Elliot Lake was about to experience a surprising and unwanted change. In 1959, the United States Atomic Energy Commission announced that it would not be renewing uranium contracts it held in Elliot Lake, and by 1963, several of the town's mines had been closed. In a matter of only a few years, the town that had once been a bustling, up-and-coming metropolis now sat quiet and vacant.
The government canceled all contracts to do with military and uranium for any purposes to do with war. So the town was devastated.
People left town, friends left town. The population dropped 20,000 to 6,000 people. Miners had to leave because mines were closing down. And that was the dark ages of Elliot Lake.
Meanwhile, Elliot Lake's history and industry had not only impacted miners and their families, but also its original inhabitants. The Indigenous population that had been shut out of all mining plans had been vocal about the potential environmental threats that the area would face down the road.
This is where the Lester B. Pearson Civic Center used to be, and so this is the empty parking lot here. And so that was one of the gathering places for community. Elders talk about that they were some of the only people actually speaking against mining or questioning, what impacts can we have? Can we think further ahead? And how, as one elder told me, what a lonely fight that can be when you're one of those only voices that are trying to have an impact on what that can look like. It's also being in the room when sometimes those decisions are being made, which was not the case in the 1950s. This is not a new story. It's a long-standing colonial pattern of coming into Indigenous territories, depleting those resources, in many ways engaging Indigenous peoples in those activities as well, right? And so that becomes something that communities have to contend with.
In the quiet years following the initial mining boom, Elliot Lake had some success rebranding itself as a destination for artists and miners in training.
This is another story too. I don't know if you guys realize this, but it's because they ran out of miners, they started almost like a school where they trained miners. So that's how a lot of them ended up here. A lot of people from Finland, Norway, and a few countries I'm not 100% where they are because the names have changed over the years.
So the influence of Elliot Lake is actually quite remarkable where we've been. The Elliot Lake Center was developed as a retraining place for miners that were laid off. So it was the first adjustment program. And they built language studios. They brought students from all over the place, live-in artists. That was the birth of Elliot Lake being a cultural and art center, was then in 1966.
With the training facility and cultural center up and running, Elliot Lake was back on its feet, and plans were made to build a new community space, one that was desperately needed and particularly Canadian.
It's a centennial arena. We call it a centennial because it was a centennial year for Canada at the time. I can talk about hockey being a Canadian tradition. It's Canada's game. Always has been, probably always will be. We were the only community along the North Shore that did not have a covered-in arena. Everybody wanted an arena so badly. In 1966, we formed a committee and I was selected as chair of that committee. Our project was to purchase an artificial ice plant and pour a concrete base arena floor. And in order to raise funds for it, we ran weekly bingos, we had walkathons. Miners at the mines were donating money through payroll deduction and that type of thing. So it was a community effort. This is a scrapbook that my wife Ann made during the building of the Centennial Arena. This is me. We completed the roof in time for a Junior A hockey game on December 15th, 1968, and the puck was dropped, and the rest is history.
Today, the arena is a gathering hub in Elliot Lake and is undergoing community-driven renewal efforts to make sure it stays open for generations to come.
This is our Junior A hockey team, the Elliot Lake Vikings, and this is their rink where they play their home games. The insulation on the upper part of the roof, that's all new. The side here that we're gonna end up fixing it up also, beautifying it. Presentations have been made for donations and that. We are plus $500,000 right now. Well, we're really happy that something that was built in 1968 is being upgraded now, and when we're done the upgrades, they've said that it will be good for another 15 to 20 years.
By the mid-1970s, the mining industry had found a new buyer of uranium, nuclear power stations. Several of Elliot Lake's mines reopened, and the population once again began to grow. Elliot Lake's hiking club is called the Courrier de Bois. Led by David Nesbitt, they hike together every few days. Some of the members have lived here long enough to remember Elliot Lake's many highs and lows.
When I first came here in 1978, it was on an upswing, very busy. Lots of miners. The mines were really going strong at that time. There were people who had houses who were renting out bedrooms as, we call it hot bunking, where they would have one guy, he would have it for his place to sleep, basically. When his shift was over, when his shift started, the next guy coming off shift would come back, and they would have that room.
It became a housing boom. So the subdivision, when you drive into town, was built because they needed to house people and the miners that were going to be there for a contract. So by 1982, it got so busy that you could not get housing unless you were a miner.
Elliot Lake was on an upswing once again, but this one wouldn't last for long. By now, uranium had become a competitive global industry and was being produced elsewhere in the world at a lower cost. The impact of this came hard and fast.
Boom, the announcement came. The mines were closing. Some of them were closing just in a few months, and you'd hear kids saying, gee, you know, my dad says we're going to move to Yellowknife because Dad had lost his job.
A whole bunch of companies up and left, businesses shut down.
Pretty depressing. Yeah. I was a surveyor, so I was working in the engineering office. We had 12 operating mines, and when they all closed except 3, it was a huge impact upon the community.
Between 1992 and 2001, all of Elliot Lake's uranium mines were shuttered. On-site buildings were removed and the mines themselves revegetated, indicating an irreversible end to an era. Elliot Lake was once again a ghost town. Full of vacant housing and empty of industry, its residents found themselves at a crucial crossroads.
When the mines left, everything changed because that's all they knew. After that, we were so busy at trying to figure out what's next.
Just to give you an idea that there's different styles of living in Elliot Lake.
Rona Girton remembers these ups and downs, having lived through them.
No one was investing in Elliot Lake anymore. It was devastating. It was devastating. You think of some of the families that had established businesses here and established homes here, and then all of a sudden that was gone. You know, you build your life here. I had every intention of staying here, but we thought, well, you know, is this, or should we really stay here? I particularly became involved with some of the development of Elliot Lake.
Today, Rona is the general manager of Elliot Lake Retirement Living, a community of seniors won over by the beauty and charm of this town.
I worked with a number of committees, and you could see fairly quickly that this whole retirement living concept was going to take off and was going to be successful. So, you know, it was the negative. It sort of ate you to the core, but then you're just like, okay, there's some potential here. It's taken a long time, but you know, the community, I think, is really successful now, and we've proved things to those people that left us back in the early 1990s.
Despite the fact that Elliot Lake has moved on to new industries, the legacy of the mining industry is still being dealt with by the residents today.
So Dad worked in the mines here in Elliot Lake until they closed in 1990. But by 2000, he was starting to have tremoring in his hands. His right hand started, and he was having difficulty with balance. He was having difficulty remembering things to be able to, for concentration. And by February 2001, he had been diagnosed with Parkinson's. Yeah. When someone you love has a debilitating neurological disease and there's nothing you can do to stop it, there's nothing I could do to stop it. So before Dad died, it was getting towards the end stage, and I had a moment alone with him, and I asked him about the mines, and he said it was scary. And I found out that he'd been exposed to McIntyre powder, aluminum dust, diesel exhaust, silica dust, arsenic, ionizing radiation, all the crap that they use to extract the ore. They use a lot of arsenic, cyanide, stuff that kills you. And I thought, it can't just be Dad. It can't just be Dad who's sick.
Janice began to research the conditions the miners were faced with, and in the process uncovered the complex relationship between working class aspirations and an industry rife with potential risks.
Recognize that?
Definitely.
Did you get one of those when you started?
I certainly did.
This is Mom's. So it's Dad's, but Mom kept it. And I always tease her because I say, Mom, you're a hoarder. And then I was so glad that she kept this.
Once I got in the apprenticeship program, it was really good money. I think my first paycheck was I was making $9 and some odd cents, which was really good for back then. The deal I made with my dad was like a deal to the devil. So the deal was, once I become an electrician, once I wrote my test and I got my ticket, my red seal to be an electrician, he says to me, you have to go and tell him that you're going to quit. The reason he wanted me to quit was he wanted me out of there because of all the health reasons.
In 1979, CBC's The Fifth Estate aired an episode on the dangers of mining, particularly when it came to silicosis, a lung disease caused by inhaling silica dust. It was a common affliction for those working in the mines. Mine owners were looking for cost-effective methods to prevent it.
The mines started to panic a little bit because they had high rates of silicosis in the mines. Things to do to try and prevent that is to have good engineering controls, like wetting down instead of having dry drilling, wetting down the walls before they drill into them, and also good ventilation, and that costs money. And so instead of spending the money on the ventilation and the engineering techniques, they decided to figure out how they could try and prevent silicosis by other means.
In 1943, doctors employed at McIntyre mines in nearby Timmins created an antidote that they hoped would help to curb high rates of silicosis: McIntyre powder, aluminum dust designed to be breathed in, an attempt to protect the lungs from the dangers of silica. Miners were urged to breathe in the black dust as deeply as they could.
They just gave it to us. They just gave it to us. It was in terms of employment. They blew it into the hallway and you had to breathe it. You had to sit there and breathe it in.
The notion that breathing in one dust would prevent someone from diseases associated with another was not widely studied or questioned. And so for decades, miners were administered McIntyre powder multiple times per shift.
It was attached to a compressed air line, and it would just blow out It was supposed to prevent the lung disease silicosis. They went to the size of the room. So they would, at McIntyre Mine, they had the four corners of the change room. They had one of these apparatuses at each of the four corners. They would set it off at this one for a minute, that one for a minute, this one for a minute, that one for a minute, and then do the cycle again. So they would be in there, and no matter where you were just crop dusted with this stuff.
We had no idea what it was, what it did to you. Just get it into your system. I was a young kid, but I see all these guys with the aftermath. I mean, like spitting up blood. It's like little pieces of glass in your throat, in your airway, and it's just whittling its way into your skin. You didn't want to do it.
Those canisters came from mine workers who had kept them because they were worried about their future health. They stopped the ventilation, they would close the doors and let the canisters go, and you'd be sitting in there for 10, 15 minutes and surrounded by everybody else coughing and hacking up because you're breathing in dust, and the aluminum would be dispersed. What I really remember, and it didn't hit me until later, was his lunch kit. So it was these steel lunch kits, and when he put it on the counter, it was black, like it was very dirty. It was like almost like a gritty. It was gritty, and when we went to clean it, if you moved it on the counter, it would be like fingernails on a chalkboard, that kind of a feel to it.
So I go back down through the dry and then go to our shop. And then to come back, I have to come back that way. But what I used to do is go up underneath the hoist, and there's a pipeway. So it used to go right to the head frame. So there was a number of us all in the trades. We'd sneak through there, and then we'd come up a manway in the head frame. So we'd bypass that hallway. If you didn't want to do the dust, if you didn't want to do the dust, if you didn't want to do the McIntyre powder, if you didn't want to sit in that room and you got caught 3 times, it was a termination of employment. Bingo, just like that. The texture of it, I don't know if you know what graphite looks like, but it goes right into the pores of your skin, and it stays there. Even when you wash, it's still into the pores of your skin. And it takes some time to come out. But it's a real fine, dry powder. Through the day, you blow your nose, it was black.
I'm not surprised that mine owners did think it was a good idea, because for them, if you look at the bottom line, it was much cheaper to expose the miners to McIntyre powder than to make sure the miners were working in a safe workplace.
There was no control group. These guys were treated like guinea pigs, and they were crop dusted.
The danger in implementing health protocols without proper clinical trials is it creates a sense of false confidence in a certain way if you implement this without looking to see if it's at least effective, let alone what kind of side effects it causes.
Shortly after the Fifth Estate aired the powder keg episode, it stopped the aluminum dust program that had gone on for 36 years. The public was gobsmacked that mine workers were being made to inhale aluminum. They're inhaling metal into their bodies. They were worried about their health and what this did to them. 27,500 mine workers in Ontario alone. So you take it out of the mines, they're no longer exposed. What happened to them? It was one thing to use McIntyre powder for 36 years in the mines. It's quite another thing to just drop these guys after they stopped using the powder. Nobody was following up. Nobody was following up.
Seeking to piece together this missing page of mining history, Janice began an outreach project with the goal of compiling a database of former miners and their subsequent health issues.
10 years after I started working at the mines, I had some issues, and I didn't realize what was wrong with me at that time. And I was very lethargic, no get up and go whatsoever.
But you were like, what, 29, 30?
No, I would have been in my 30s, I think.
Wow.
And burnt out. No energy whatsoever. Burnt day after day. I'd go to bed at night right after supper sometimes. And I'd wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, ready to go to work. And I'm tired. And I don't know what's wrong with me. Why? I don't know. Dorothy, my wife, says to me, "There's something wrong with you." And the wife said to me, "That's it. I had enough of you. You're going to the doctor." And that's what we did. She brought me to the doctor, and the doctor found did some biopsy, And that's when I got the diagnosis. I had cancer on my thyroid. So she said, yeah, you got this cancer through radiation someplace, and it could have been through the mines in Elliot Lake. So it's...
Took a few decades, but...
Yeah, but the scary part is, you know what? I was away from the mine. That was the scary part.
Yeah.
You know, I was a long ways from the mine, like 10 years or more. And then you get this and you say, well, what happened here?
Mm-hmm.
I got 3 kids sitting out in the hallway and my wife. And I got 3 boys that are bing, 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 like set of stairs. And I gotta, how am I gonna bring these kids up? Who's gonna be their dad? What's gonna happen to my boys? I had my thyroid removed and I had to stay in a lead encased room. And there was a slot in the door where they brought the food to you. Guy comes in, I don't know if you know what a hazmat suit is. You know, it's scary. Like, I'm still young, I'm a young man.
While Elliot Lake continues to reconcile with the legacy of its mining history, its residents take pride in their ability to pivot during uncertain times, always honoring the past while forging ahead to find solutions for the future.
Elliot Lake has gone through a number of boom and busts through its life. So in the late 1970s, early 1980s, the mining companies that were here anticipated another boom. So they built a considerable amount of housing here in the community. That boom never really happened the way they anticipated it would. So they were left with surplus housing. They said, well, what do we do? We've got all of these housing units. And that's when someone posed the question, who needs a place to live but doesn't need a job? And what does Elliot Lake have to offer? A lot of recreation. There's ATVing, a lot of biking in Elliot Lake. As a kid, we used to swim out to that rock and we would dive off of it. So it's just got a lot of meaning for people who grew up here. You know, our role is to promote Elliot Lake as an affordable place to retire to. So if you take away that concept of promoting Elliot Lake as a place to retire, I don't think Elliot Lake would exist as it does now because there's no other industry. So what we've done is we've made an industry out of importing retirees to our community, making sure that Elliot Lake is a place that people actually want to move to and want to stay in. It's a nice, affordable lifestyle. It's decent accommodations. It's a full service community. It's a very friendly community and it's got the beautiful outdoors. So it's a great place to retire to.
Today, Elliot Lake has become known as a retirement haven.
I was already living here for 7, 8 years. And then I met him. I was still working. I was working at the restaurant down there.
I was driving back from town and I saw this lady walking on the trail and I pulled over and I said, hey girl, you want to ride? And she said, no. I said, it's raining.
I didn't even know who he was.
So I said, she kept walking. I stopped again. I said, you know, we should go for coffee sometime. She said, I don't date. I said, I didn't ask for a date. I just asked to go for coffee.
Now we've been married 8 years, July 23rd, and hanging around for 10.
Elliot Lake is now in a period of growth, thanks to the boost in industry that comes with a population increase.
When I came here almost 18 years ago, you never waited at a stop sign. There was nobody in front of you at the traffic light. We had one. And it just was so much less busy. And the houses were cheap, so people saw opportunity to retire early.
Right here in the subdivision, you could pick and choose any houses.
I have a friend that bought a condo on a credit card. $8,000 because he couldn't get a mortgage, so he had to put it on his credit card. The mortgage was, they wouldn't do $8,000, it was too little.
I think I saw an ad, it might have been an online ad, but I had a friend that moved here, I guess probably 20 years ago when it was when the mines were just closing down and the housing was cheap. And I looked for an apartment in Midland because that's where I was based at the time. And it was twice as much as what they were asking for rents for here. So the rent option was probably the biggest, the first draw at least. And once I got here, I found this was, there was a lot more things that I wanted.
Absolutely the perfect retirement. Every day is like a dream. Take a canoe, go paddling, beautiful Dunlop Lake, have a nice picnic lunch, go swimming. Life has been good. I wake up in the morning and I say, life is good in Elliot Lake. I'm going to dream today like I'm going to live forever.
I've been that way all my life. Age really isn't something that even occurs to me. So when I was in my 30s or 40s, I wasn't thinking about retirement.
David Nesbitt is a member and guide for the Courrier de Bois Outdoors Club, a local hiking group made up of mostly seniors.
When I was young, anybody that was old to me, the reason I thought they were old is because they were frail, and you had to be wary of running too close in case you startled them or knocked them over or whatever. But certainly not. The people in the hiking club are generally very active seniors. Although I think we've got probably 24 knee replacements already, 4 or 5 hip replacements as well, and actually a couple people on the waiting list for knees and or hips. We went out to dinner probably 3 months ago with a few of us, and at the table there were 9 replacement joints at the table with us. So.
Elliot Lake has Canada's 3rd highest population of residents over 65. It's a figure that affects all levels of available care, information that potential new residents should seriously consider.
Elliot Lake has a challenge when it comes to providing services to individuals for healthcare at the hospital. There's a shortage of nurses, there's a shortage of doctors, and that means long wait times for individuals who go to the hospital. So, but we see that across the board as well. So I don't know that Elliot Lake is just unique in that matter. So it's always a challenge when individuals move. Elliot Lake is a little bit off the beaten path, of course. And so, I would just say to individuals that they really have to consider, what challenges may be ahead before they take a move. Are they going to have access to a family doctor? Is the infrastructure here what they're looking for? It's constantly an evolving door on how you move things forward and how you respond to the needs. But, they do try to fill the need as best as possible to ensure that it can continue to attract not just seniors, but families here as well. So that has a huge impact on their lives.
Ideally, I would like to have primary care doctor here, but it's not possible for a variety of reasons. So I've kept my doctor in Midland. 2 hours to Sudbury, 2 hours to the turn in Midland, and 5 hours probably to the doctor.
The question often comes up, can I get a doctor here? Just like anyone in any other community, we suggest you don't give up your family doctor until you've secured a new doctor. Just like anywhere else in Ontario, it's hard to get that family doctor. But we have nurse practitioners, we have an emergency department, so you can still get health care here.
Today, Elliot Lake is called home by not only a community of retirees, but also a tight-knit group of former employees of the various mines from Elliot Lake's heyday. Since uncovering the occupational diseases many of them sustained while working underground, Janice has started an initiative assisting former miners in applying for benefits they are owed.
So this is where I keep all of my McIntyre Powder Project voluntary registry people.
The McIntyre Powder Project helps former miners file their claims for compensation and reparations. Many of them are battling injuries and illnesses as a result of their time in the mines.
I started researching, and then I sat in a grocery store here in Elliot Lake with a sign saying, hey, if you were exposed to McIntyre powder, aluminum dust, you worked in the mines, come talk to me. And I started a voluntary registry to see who was exposed to this.
That's when somebody told me, go see her because she might have something for you because of your cancer, your thyroid cancer. So I went there. I had no idea who Janet was. And she introduced herself and she said, we're trying to find medical problems in the mining sector. Why are people having issues, health issues?
Roger is one of many Janice has guided through the process of filing claims with the government related to mining illnesses and injuries.
I felt relieved. At least somebody's helping me. When I was told that I had cancer, I had nobody there. There was nobody to go to. I left the mines in Elliot Lake. They were closed down. There was no going back there. So you're on your own. I got to deal with my doctor. I felt relieved big time, yeah. Because I don't know how to say this, but it's hitting home here. It's hitting home. I don't know.
Elliot Lake proudly honors its miners, as evidenced by the town's memorial, as well as the public murals and street signs displaying the faces and names of important figures in the industry.
When the mine shut down in 1990, the steelworkers funded the Miners' Memorial.
Right.
So how do you get your name on there? The first part was easy because it's a traumatic accident that happened. You died as a result of a mining accident. The second part was that you passed as a result of working in the mines, and how did we recognize that? If they recognize that as that you succumbed or died as a result of working in the mine, then through, say, industrial disease, then they recognize that.
I always love it when everyone gets together. It's my favorite thing. Yeah. I have to tell you something. When Dad had his Parkinson's and we were dealing with it, we had no help at all. So knowing that you guys get help, that makes a world of difference to me. Listen, I want you to live a long life and be okay. But if you were to pass and it had something to do with your Parkinson's, then you can go on the memorial wall and Elaine would get survivor benefits for life. Pension every month. So you know that she's gonna been taken care of. I just want you to know that, okay?
Yeah.
So my dad's here. Jim Hobbs. Do you remember him? Mining is a whole other world. Really, when I compare it, when you get World War II veterans together, they start talking about their war stories. And you see that over and over again. These guys are underground. They really work in a very foreign environment. They experience trauma together. They experience tragedies.
When I met your dad, I was a trolley driver. We would meet in the lunchroom. We had each other. That's all we had in the back.
So did you have to administer the powder to yourself?
Yeah. You're the operator and you had two helpers.
Yeah.
And the three of us had to go into the room and hang on to your breath as long as you could.
Yeah.
I think she's impacted a lot of mining families because it gives the guys some hope now. They have hope that we never had before. We had nothing before. We had nobody fighting for us.
I wanted to find out what happened to these guys. I wanted to find out if they were okay. Are you okay? That's a pretty simple question. And I shouldn't be the person doing this. This should be the people that gave them, the mine owners, the government that allowed it to happen. It's nice to see the old guard. When you work in the mines, you don't leave anyone behind. And I didn't want to leave these guys behind. When you're underground, you're not seen. Occupational disease happens 30, 40 years later, and you're unseen. You're not at the workplace. You're in hospices, you're in hospitals, you're dying at home, you're struggling. I wanted to make these guys seen. Dad made me seen. I want to make them seen. Before he passed, so he got to come up here and see it, and he was pretty proud. It's the best Father's Day gift they ever gave him. When you get to mining communities, or any industrial community, you know, the industry is God in that community. They build the arenas, the streets are named after them. You wander around Elliot Lake, You're going to see Hershorn, Roman, streets that are named after mine owners, after prospectors. Where's the ones that are named after the guys who broke their backs in the mines, literally broke their backs in the mines? That's what I want to see. I want to see their stories remembered.
Everybody is connected in Elliot Lake, which contributes to the resiliency because we're all connected either directly or indirectly to mining. And we're all here because this was a mining community to begin with.
Weren't we coined the biggest boom since the Klondike days? Like put
Yes.
only uranium in
Somewhere
a uranium
along
twist?
the line, yeah.
Right? It was a huge thing back then. And when you look at the books, it's amazing how much money was spent in this town in the 50s. Astronomical numbers.
If I was to say anything about Elliot Lake, my passion about Elliot Lake is that there's resiliency. And people will get engaged if you ask them. And sometimes you have to sit back and wait till the timing is right. And I've learned that over the years, that sometimes it doesn't happen as quickly as you want. But at this point in time, I think that we should be celebrating the fact that we were the world capital for uranium.
You know, at the end of the day, there were challenges for individuals, but you know, the town saw a path forward. So Elliot Lake Retirement Living played a huge role in the revival of the city of Elliot Lake. And there is a lot of hope out there. And if you love the outdoors, if you have family in the area, this is certainly the place to be.
This community would not be what it is today if everyone didn't roll up their sleeves and do what they needed to do to promote this town and develop this town as a retirement destination. Our vacancy rate when I started retirement living was probably, I'm guessing 26, 27%. And right now it's like 1.5%.
Driving around like this, I think a lot about my, childhood and young adulthood, because it is complex. And being able to separate good times and bad times is sort of just, I guess, how sometimes memories work. And that doesn't mean you ignore everything else. You don't ignore the complexity or anything like that. But, I think it's important to try and focus on good times. I think there's a certain healing that comes out of focusing on positive memories. This story demonstrates to me at a very basic level a clash between worldviews, viewing extraction as progress and money being at the center of things from a settler perspective. And to have the centrality of land and water threatened in perpetuity is something that continues to galvanize a lot of people in our community and is something that we can never lose sight of because it is so central to who we are and how we understand ourselves as human beings, that they're not resources. It is land, it is water. We depend on them for life. One thing that being an historian teaches you is that nobody, is 100% successful the first time they try something. That it does take resilience. I think that as long as we continue to try and be optimistic, as long as we keep thinking about youth and our responsibilities to youth and to our territory, I think that's the root of that resilience, of moving forward.